Hello, this is Krystal, and thank you for joining me for this week's First Chapter Friday. Today I will be reading from Robin Hobb's Ship of Magic. This is next month's Dragon City Book Club selection, so please check it out and join us next month. Chapter 1 of Priests and Pirates. Kenneth walked the tide line, heedless of the salt waves that washed around his boots as they licked the sandy beach clean of his tracks. He kept his eyes on the straggling line of seaweed, shells and snags of driftwood that marked the water's highest reach. The tide was just turning now, the waves falling ever shorter in their pleading grasp upon the land. As the salt water retreated down the black sand, it would bear the worn molars of shell and tangles of kelp that now hid beneath the waves. On the other side of Other's Island, his two-masted ship was anchored in Deception Cove. He had brought the Marietta and to anchor there as the morning winds had blown the last of the storm clean of the sky. The tide had still been rising then. The fanged rocks of the notorious cove grudgingly receded beneath frothy green lace. The ship's gig had scraped over in between the barnacled rocks to put him and Genghis ashore on a tiny crescent of black sand beach that disappeared completely when storm winds drove the waves up past the high tide marks. Above, slate cliffs loomed, and evergreens so dark they were nearly black leaned precariously out in defiance of the prevailing winds. Even to Kenneth's iron nerves, it was like stepping into some creature's half-open mouth. They left Opal, the ship's boy, with the gig to protect it from the bizarre mishaps that so often befell unguarded craft in Deception Cove. Much to the boy's unease, Kenneth had commanded Genghis to come with him, leaving the boy and boat alone. At Kenneth's last sight, the boy had been perched in the beached boat. His eyes had alternated between fearful glances over his shoulder at the forested cliff tops and staring anxiously out to where the Marietta strained against her anchors, yearning to join the racing current that swept past the mouth of the cove. The hazards of visiting this island were legendary. It was not just the hostility of the best anchorage on the island, nor the odd accidents known to befall ships and visitors. The whole of the island was enshrouded in the peculiar magic of the others. Kenneth had felt it tugging at him as he and Genghis followed the path that led from Deception Cove to the treasure beach. For a path seldom used, its black gravel was miraculously clean of fallen leaves or intruding plant life. About them, the trees dripped the second-hand rain of last night's storm onto fern fronds already burdened with crystal drops. The air was cool and alive. Brightly hued flowers, always growing at least a man's length from the path, challenged the dimness of the shaded forest floor. Their scents drifted alluringly on the morning air as if beckoning the men to leave off their quest and explore their world. Less wholesome in appearance were the orange fungi that stair-stepped up the trunks of many of the trees. The shocking brilliance of their color spoke to Kenneth of parasitic hungers. A spider's web, hung like the ferns with fine droplets of shining water, stretched across their path, forcing them to duck under it. The spider that sat at the edges of its strands was as orange as the fungi, and nearly as big as a baby's fist. A green tree frog was enmeshed and struggling in the web's sticky strands, but the spider appeared disinterested. Genghis made a small sound of dismay as he crouched to go beneath it. This path led right through the midst of the other's realm. Here was where the nebulous boundaries of their territory could be crossed by a man, did he dare to leave the well-marked path allotted to humans and step off into the forest to seek them. In ancient times, so the tales told, heroes came here, not to follow the path, but to leave it deliberately, to beard the others in their dens, and seek the wisdom of their cave-imprisoned goddess, or demand gifts such as cloaks of invisibility and swords that ran with flames and could shear through any shield. Bards that had dared to come this way had returned to their homelands with voices that could shatter a man's ears with their power, or melt the heart of any listener with their skill. All knew the ancient tale of Caven Ravenlock, who visited the others for 100 years, and returned as if but a day had passed for him, but with hair the color of gold, and eyes like red coals, and true songs that told of the future in twisted rhymes. Kenneth snorted softly to himself. All knew such ancient tales, but if any man had ventured to leave this path in Kenneth's lifetime, he had told no other man about it. Perhaps he had never returned to brag of it. The pirate dismissed it from his mind. He had not come to the island to leave the path, but to follow it to its very end, and all knew what waited there as well. And if you would like to know what happens next, you can read this title on the Libby app. Please join me here next week as I read from the beginning of Sarah Beth Durst's The Spell Shop. Thank you and have a great week.